Welcome back to the Detroit is Different podcast studio. And I have somebody that is one of my favorite people, like for real. And I know a lot of people. So, like, the favorite group means that you pouring all types of love into our community. And it don't get more community than where she's been pouring in. And heck of a life story and journey. And she a twin. So it's like double this lady. But it's hard to even think about so much double influence of community work, activism, so many partnerships over the years. And then you think about it that these are like one of my OGs for over 10 years, just doing little things in and around and just seeing how things move and bringing people together and gathering. And now actually open enough to connect with Detroit is Different and gathering people around some of the efforts of Detroit is Different as well. Ravendale Community's own Toni McIlwain, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing just fine.
Okay, all right,
Doing great.
all right. So we got to get into this classic Detroit is Different, and we're going to get there. But let's talk a little bit about you and Ravendale and community work itself. What connects you to do so many things for people in the community that are so used to just not being resourced at all sometimes?
Well, they need it
Mm-hmm.
for one thing, okay? They need to feel that they belong.
Mm-hmm.
And they need to feel that they have gifts and talents that's a part of the success. People really have a lot to offer if only we allow them to offer it.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so only allowed to offer, got a lot to offer. So as you combine that, now we can drive into the classic Detroit is Different question. Generations deep of Detroit. Are you first generation, second generation? How did your family come to Detroit?
Well, my family came to Detroit after some very devastating, I would say, a hard time, and came from Akron, Ohio. We came from Akron, Ohio.
The Rebel City.
Yep, came from Akron, Ohio with my 4 little kids at the time. And we had to make, and it was something to be on the streets of Detroit for a
Okay.
long time.
All right. So why Detroit? Why not choose Cleveland? For people that don't know, like Akron is like the Flint of Cleveland, or you could have went to Pittsburgh, you could have went to New York. Why did you choose Detroit?
You know what? This may seem a little strange,
Mm-hmm.
but I had a map in front of me. I actually had a map in front of me, and I looked at all the different cities that was on that map, and I chose Detroit.
Interesting. Okay, and all right, for people that are watching that are younger, at one point in time, you put stuff in MapQuest or Waze, but back in the day, people would go to usually a gas station and you buy maps, and then you will learn. That's how you navigate from place to place to place to place to
That's
place.
exactly what happened.
All
That's
right.
exactly what happened. I picked up a map and picked a city, and I picked Detroit. I picked Detroit because I was excited about what I read about Detroit.
Okay, what were you reading about
Well,
Detroit?
one thing that really excited me about Detroit is that Black people had their own businesses.
Mm.
And the pictures that were shown in Akron actually showed people selling on the streets, making their own money, buying from each other. I was excited about that.
All right, what era? What time are we talking?
We're talking about the 70s,
Okay.
the early 70s.
Okay.
I was very excited about Detroit.
So Coleman Young was mayor when you arrived to Detroit?
Coleman Young was mayor.
Okay. All right. So you were here for a Mayor Young administration, and you were a new Detroiter in that time.
That's right.
And that was a time when many people said, like, a lot of people were leaving the city
That's right.
and not coming to the city.
That's
What was it
right.
like making an adjustment from a city like Akron to Detroit, as so many people were leaving at the time?
Well, you know what? It was exciting to me. You know what? I remember calling my mom at home because I told her, Mom, they have stores on every corner. They have party stores on every corner. We didn't have that.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that I saw that I moved into, and it was a very, very poor area.
Mm-hmm.
But what excited me was there was people our color that was running the little party stores. Selling on the streets, the vibrant colors. I remember walking my kids downtown to the Kern block.
Okay, the Kern block. If people know, when I would do the Woodward, the Kwanzaa at the Woodward celebrations years ago, the Woodward restaurant was like right there in front of the Kern clock. So it's a big clock downtown near now. I guess they're revitalizing the Hudson site, but not
Right.
far from where Hudson's was.
That's right.
And a signature piece of downtown.
That's right. Didn't have any money. As a matter of fact, didn't have any money, but I would walk down there.
You were as the dramatics would say,
Right.
you were just shopping, not buying anything.
That's right. Not buying anything. I'd have a little change, buy my ice cream, sit on the bench, and just watch the people go by.
Okay.
People were happy then.
Okay.
They were happy because you know why?
Why?
Because they were a part of the process. They were a part of the process.
Okay. And then now let's talk a little bit about your family stayed in Akron? The rest of your family?
No. Yes. My twin sister ended up coming up to Detroit.
Okay.
Okay. And my mother and my grandmother ended up staying in Akron.
Okay. All right. And I guess that way, another one of those industrial cities that we think, like I say, the rubber city is what we think. And I'm always interested in those people that come to Detroit. How did your children make the adjustment here? What were they thinking?
Oh, they were very excited. They were small, but they were excited because they were able to, one, learn their culture. Okay, at that time, they would learn their culture. Two, because they would actually be with the same color, and they were happy about that.
Yeah. So now being in this black city, and it's so interesting you bring that up. Like my father from Cincinnati, my interviews with Anthony Adams. Shout out to Attorney Adams from Cincinnati as well, and Charlie Beckham from Cincinnati. I'm bringing all these Cincinnati people.
I didn't know that.
But even other than that, a lot of people, Mama Neff that was from Chicago coming here, a lot of black folks that came here in the 70s say that, wow, they were just so shocked with all of the black influence in this city. Like almost like, like just even like my dad mentions, he gets pulled over and gets a ticket, but it was just so shocking just to see black officers.
That's right. That's right. And you know what was really exciting to me also is the way they dressed. The excitement, the colors, the African colors that the guys wore when they were selling when they had vending bikes and tables out in the street. It was just, you knew they were part of you. And I was excited about that.
Okay, so now let's talk about work. So you come here, and this is the city that you're destined for. Where do you end up finding work?
Well, I ended up, I came here actually without any education. And I ended up actually living on the streets of Detroit. I lived on the streets of Detroit for 18 months.
Wow.
With 4 kids. And I ended up knowing that I had to make a change in my life. I knew that,
So experiencing that, and I've read your book, and I know I'm going through some of the things, but now I can like kind of drive deeper. What neighborhoods and what places did you find to be more welcome, especially in a time like the 70s? I'm unaware of where unhoused populations were and what was commonplace, very prevalent now when we see communities, but how common was that back then?
Well, you know what? I was always on the east side of Detroit, and I lived over there in the abandoned house, actually over there near Mack and Newport is where I lived in this abandoned home. And I even, and what made me start reaching out is that when you're trying to feed 4 kids and none of them are in school because you don't have the necessary tools to get them in school. I remember going to, and this was a defining moment in my life when I went to beg for food to feed my kids. And I found most of them friendly, most of the people friendly, and would give me some food. And I would promise them I would pay them back. I will pay you back if you just give me a little bit of food where I could feed my kids. And I remember going to the store one day, and the store was closed. And that store was called the Champion Food Market. It sat on the corner of East Lawn and Mac. And I went to that store to feed my kids, and the door was closed. The store was closed. I couldn't figure out why was it closed. And I tell people, when your stomach is empty, your brain doesn't work too well. And mine didn't that day because I had actually dropped down to 85 pounds.
Wow.
And I remember going to the alley because I was looking for food. I was looking for food to feed my kids. And I'm saying to myself, maybe they threw some food away. I was desperate.
Yeah.
And I went in the dumpster, and this big rat jumps out.
Oh.
Big old rat jumps out. I thank that rat today, though. And I'll tell you why. Because as that rat was running down the alley with the food in his mouth, I said to myself, that rat is smarter than I am. He got the food before I got it.
Wow.
He got that food, and he's smarter than I am. And I realized at that point in my life, I had to change my life. I had to do something to my kids. And I remember dropping to my knees, crying like a baby. Lord, if you just open up one door, I will give back the rest of my life.
Wow. So your connection to giving
came from that moment.
Came from a moment in your life where you're like, okay, I can be present and pour into others that are possibly experiencing but should never experience something like this.
That's right.
And from there, what steps are you taking?
Well, the next steps, I went back to the abandoned home. My kids would sleep on the floor. Went back to the abandoned home, and I said to myself, I got to change. I got to change. I got to make this change. I woke up, and I started walking down the street of Matt, and I saw a sign that said, help wanted. It was in a cleaners, called Henry Cleaners at that time.
Okay.
And I walked in, and I said, hi. My name is Antoinette. I want a job. And the lady looked at me and she said, well, what can you do? I said, I can do anything.
Yep.
I can do anything. And you know what? She must have been an angel that day because I remember even speaking at her funeral. And she looked at me and she said, I'm going to try you out. Okay. She said, but first thing I said, what about my kids? She said, kids? How old are you? You have to remember now, I had all my kids by the time I was 19. I was in my early 20s. And she said, I'll tell you what. She said, I don't know why I'm doing this, but bring them with you. I have a place in the back. If they're well-behaved, you could bring them with you, and I'll start you off part-time. And that's how I started. And my kids were well-behaved because they had to be well-behaved because I would lock them in a house.
Hilarious.
And tell them to wait till I get back. I'm going to get you something to eat. And that's how it started. From there, I started looking in the phone book for a school that I could go to get my high school diploma. So I looked in this book, and there was this school that you could get a high school diploma, and they had childcare right there. So I would take some of the money that I made at the cleaners, and I would take 2 buses with 4 kids and got my high school diploma. Then I was selected out of that class. I attended a business opportunity class. I went there and was selected to start working at MBD Bank. It was MBD Bank, and that's how I did it.
Okay. So MBD at one point in time, and the branches are still up around, like the building, the structures are now it's Chase Bank.
That's right.
It became, was it like, before Chase, it was like One Detroit or something, or it was something else, but it's Chase Bank now, but MBD, National Bank of Detroit.
That's right. I worked there in the stocks and bonds department.
Okay.
And typing up their stocks and bonds, delivering them to the traders upstairs.
Oh, so you worked in the downtown branch.
I worked downtown.
Okay.
Downtown.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about just that that journey and that courage, because oftentimes we can find ourselves feeling as though we're on an island, not seek support from others because of the shame associated with it, or the misunderstandings associated with it, or feeling as though you don't want to burden other people. But people can be, whether it be health challenges, whether it be financial challenges, whether it even be other spiritual or mental challenges, people will go through a lot.
They do. They do. I remember going to the welfare office, asking for help.
Mm-hmm.
And the welfare office told me they couldn't do anything because I didn't have a permanent address.
Mm.
How am I going to have a permanent address and I live in an abandoned home?
Yeah.
And there was nothing I could do. And I remember walking out that door, leaving the kids there. And I said, I can't take care of them. You take care of them.
Mm.
I can't take care of them. You take care of them. And as I was walking down the street, there was a car, had their radio up so loud. And there was this song, if you may have beans, beans every day, but we're going to make it. When I heard that song, I turned around and went back and got my kids.
Mm.
And they were still sitting there, 8 eyes looking at me like, Mom, we knew you'd be back.
Yeah.
And I walked out of there and I said, we're going to make it some kind of way.
Okay. So the journey, even in school, and that courage, because there are so many people, and you do this work now and helping so many people getting that high school diploma, and that gateway. And many people, the GED program as well, end up not completing high school for many reasons. I graduated from Northwestern, and like I always say, like my last name is Frazier. So when I walk across the stage at Shane Park or the Aretha now, it's like I could kind of see the end. And people have those the graduation shirts with all the people's names and everything, and then you star everybody's name. And there's so many people that made it even the senior year, but for whatever reason didn't complete.
That's right. That's right.
And I never thought that I would know people like that. But so many people I know where it just be certain things like, man, you just got to do this. But it'd be other like mental blocks, I think, in that way.
They lost hope. They lost hope. They looked at a lot of their surroundings and they just lost hope.
Mm.
And if we're not there to give it to them, they'll never finish.
How did you reconnect with the hope?
I reconnected by looking at my kids, knowing that I had to do something. I reconnected by those that were around me. The lady that gave me the job at the cleaners. That was hope. She knew that I had to do something.
Mm-hmm.
She wanted to do something. That was hope. There are people in your life I call The Point. I remember reading this book called The Point. She was a point in my life. There are different people in your lives that are points in your life that gives you that hope. And that's what I want to be. I want to be points in people's lives.
And I definitely think you've done that over and beyond. And just even in hearing this story, I'm sure that it's going to inspire so many other people to get motivated about different things in life that you may not see manifest all the way, but manifesting that vision and sticking to it and seeing it through and believing in yourself and having that confidence. It's a lot more courageous than even these words can put into place. So MBD, stocks and bonds, and this is a different type of market. So I'm guessing this is like so I'm guessing this is like mid 70s, late 70s.
Yes.
Okay.
Late 70s, early 80s.
Early 80s. So we know in the early 80s, in that stocks and bonds market, it's a big crash.
Right.
What happens and what's the perspective of that going on as you're working in that market?
Well, as I was working in that, it's funny. One of my kids, my youngest one, Lynette, got deathly ill. And at that time, I was actually going to Wayne County Community College for speech. I wanted to take up speech.
Yeah.
And she was definitely ill, and they only gave her so many months to live. And I had to leave my job because they was going to let her come home. And I remember knowing that I had to leave my financial stability to take care of her. But she made it. By the grace of God, she made it. And it was that point in my life that I had to make another decision. And I knew that what had me coming over the threshold the first time, that I could do it a second time. That is, a lot of people don't understand that. Once you get it in you that you can make it, you're going to continually make it. You know, you're not going to let the fact that something happened in between get you down. You're going to make it. You know, and I had it in me because of what I've been through, because of what I've been to before that brought me to Detroit. And looking back at my life, I knew I was going to make it. Anyway, I knew I was going to make it. How, where it was going to come from, I didn't know. But I know, I tell people this all the time, even the students that I work with, there are angels in your life that's going to help you make it. You just have to find them.
And I definitely, I can see that point. I was more so like, so you shifted before the crash, before the market crash in the 80s.
Right.
You leave the market there.
Right.
And now, and where do you work after that, after caring for
I
that?
went actually after bringing
MBD.
my child home from the hospital, leaving that job. I actually went back to school and got my education, and I ended up working at Osborne High School.
The Bourne. Okay.
I worked there
What you
for
do at the
5
Bourne?
years. I worked in the counseling department
Man, what was
at
that like?
Osborne High School. It's funny. I run into some of the students now that I've grown and married.
In the 80s, I'm guessing.
In the 80s at Osborne High School. And I knew that was one of my callings. It's because I watch students go through a struggle. And one of my jobs was to make sure they get the right classes and to make sure that they follow through. And I got a joy out of seeing them walk across that stage just as happy as they can be.
And what do you think drew you into counseling itself?
I think what drew me in is when I was in that alley that day. I said, gosh, if I could pull myself up by the bootstraps, why can't other people do it? And when I started Ravendale, I knew that there were people out there that just needed hope. They just needed somebody to tell them that they could make it.
So as you're at Osborne, the vision was always to move into like creating a community group?
Creating a community group. I left Osborne, to work with an organization at that time called Joy of Jesus, and they were working out in the community. So I started working out there, putting up block club after block club, developing leadership.
What neighborhood?
It was what neighborhood? It was around Harper to Elmdale neighborhood, around the city, just south of the city airport.
Okay. So some of what would touch into Ravendale itself.
Right.
And creating a block club. Explain what that story, what that journey is like. And I'm guessing this has to be like late 80s, early 90s.
Right.
Where people are acting like everything is extremely crazy because of crack cocaine. And, you know, people are putting more bars are getting up on windows and everything.
It was something. But I moved into the Ravendale community. I moved into that area. And it's funny, I was walking to the mailbox. That's when they actually had mailboxes up. You drop your mail in. And I saw this lady actually planting flowers. She had the most gorgeous yard on the block. And I asked her my name. I said, boy, I was telling her, boy, there's a beautiful flower. She looked at me and she said, lady, I said, my name is Toni McIlwain. I live down the street. She said, didn't nobody ask you your name? And when she said that, I was so hurt. I was devastated.
Wow.
I went home crying to my husband. I said, all I did was tell this lady about if she hurt my feeling. He said, Toni, everyone's not as friendly as you are. This is what he told me.
Yeah.
I said, yeah, but we don't know anybody. We don't know the people next door, really. And we got to pull this block together. I'm going to start a block club. And that's what happened.
So you were doing the work for the other group of starting block club.
Right.
And then but you didn't necessarily start it in your neighborhood. But let's talk a little bit about just what that was like working in getting block clubs started. What was the approach with the that group?
I did up a letter
Mm-hmm.
and we're going to have a block club meeting and come to my house at 12774 Wade. I'll never forget.
Mm-hmm.
No one showed up. So the second time, I did another letter. I wasn't going to quit. See, that's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Not quitting. I did another letter. 2 people showed up.
Yeah.
I said, we're going to start a block club.
Mm-hmm.
So this time, I went to the store and bought me a bullhorn.
Funny.
I went up and down the street with the bullhorn. Hi, my name is Toni Mack. I'm going where I want to start a block club. Bring a chair. You're coming to 12774 Wade. And I guess they said, this lady is crazy.
Probably.
They came.
What day did you do that and what time?
Hey, it was in the morning because I said.
Oh, even more reason. They was like,
yeah.
oh, this lady.
I'm like,
oh
yeah,
my
it's
gosh.
crazy. I say, eat your eggs, drink your coffee because you're coming to a block club meeting. And they start coming to their doors, looking out, and they say, this lady is crazy. We're going to come see what she's talking about.
Uh-huh.
And half of the block showed up.
Okay.
And I started from there.
So half the block shows up, but this is before we even get into your neighborhood. You were organizing block clubs in other neighborhoods.
No, I was organizing in my neighborhood.
And that's what led to
the other neighborhood.
Okay, so all right, so you get those people to come.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you talk about when you get let's say it's 30 people? What are you talking about? Because now it's just you and then
I asked them what was the problem on the block. What is your biggest problem?
What were type of the feedback?
Crime. Okay.
What type of crime?
Drugs. Mm-hmm. Mostly drugs at that time. It was drugs on the block. So
we're definitely thinking, like we say. I'm guessing, is this late 80s or early 90s?
This is the early 90s.
So early 90s, as we know, the distribution of especially the way crack cocaine.
That's right.
Came into our community, but along with crack, other substances too, pills, heroin, and me being a kid, I was born in 82, and even like where my garden sits, where the Detroit is Different garden sits, is a home that I guess people would consider a crack house, where Big James stayed. My homeboy, Little James. And like it was a 2-family flat. So downstairs was the crack house, and upstairs they lived. And it's so unique that it's like, wow, a community garden sits where a crack house used to be.
Right.
But this is me knowing my neighborhood. And early 90s, it was so prevalent throughout a lot of the homes in Detroit, as so many people had left, that, places for people to use would be prevalent with where people would sell. So it was commonplace for that to exist. Usually from younger people, because of the drug sentencing laws at the time weren't as strenuous on younger people. So it was more involvement of younger people for crack cocaine, the industry, like a the whole idea of you're not going to face the sentencing that someone older would get. So older people would involve intentionally, like teenagers involved in it.
That's
so a teenager is going to sell drugs differently than an older person. I think that it's often a story told as if like drugs weren't in the black community before crack cocaine. I think the key difference is just younger people, their discernment is different. But heroin has been prevalently inside the black community going back to the days of jazz. I mean, we think of rest in peace John Coltrane and all of what he struggled with, and many others in that alignment within black culture. And sadly, I'm using him as an example, but so many jazz legends. But just as it's always been prevalent, but never from the lens of a 15-year-old whose perspective of it will be different than like a 50-year-old or a 40-year-old that's looking at it more enterprisingly. So this puts this in many neighborhoods like yours and obviously mine. How did you all go about resolving that? Because even as you're walking up and down the street with the bullhorn, I'm pretty sure you're walking past the spot itself.
That's right. What when the residents on the block said there's a drug house down the street, and we have been calling the police. So I came up with a different
approach,
way of getting rid of the drug house.
Yeah.
What I did was let's talk to the landlord that owns the house, and let's come up with a solution, and let's get him to get rid of the people that's selling the drugs, and we give him a good tenant. Let's ask him to allow us to pick the tenant to go in that house. Somebody that will play a part of the block club, and somebody that would take care of the house, and somebody that will pay the rent on time.
Okay, that can be courageous, dangerous, a lot of things, and I'm going to use the term very bold. How did you go about even approaching that landlord and finding who that landlord was, having that conversation? Most landlords are pretty aware when they got a spot.
The stronger the two is going to win out. Either you're going to be bold and do it, or you're going to allow whatever you're going to be bold with overpower you. The stronger the two is going to win out. What I did is I saw the landlord leaving there. And as I look back, it was very dangerous. He was a Caucasian guy, and I saw him leaving that house. And I followed him in my car because I was trying to catch up with him. I went up to him. Hi, my name is Toni McIlwain. As you can see, we've really cleaned up the block, and I'm the president of this block club. I said, you have people selling drugs in that house. I said, sir, if you get rid of the problem, let us talk to the tenants. Let us be the ones that bring in a good tenant.
So,
and he did that.
So you talked about we've been cleaning up the block. What were you all doing?
Oh, we put law lights up and down the block. We painted the curbs. We talked to the residents about putting trash out there. We did a lot of things to make that block stand out. There was a sign on each end of the block that says, "Welcome to Neighbors United on Wade." On the other end, it said, "You are now leaving Neighbors United on Wade." That's what we named the block club, and the residents named it. And the whole idea is to show the other blocks in the area that your block could look like this block.
And also, in turn, for the person that's the landlord, I'm a big in, sometimes we must put in some work that a person sees, and this kind of goes back to like street vernacular, but for a person to honor it. Because that's a whole different exchange with that landlord if no efforts were already made by that block club already. If you just walk like, hey, the biggest problem is the dope spot. And then it's like, all right, well, let's go down there to the landlord. Like that shows that and I'm sure the landlord's even seeing it like, okay,
Right.
I didn't mind my tenant, using it this
Right.
way for so long because the neighborhood kind of reflected that, this is probably
That
the
it
type
could
of
be.
tenant that I'm going to
That's
have
right.
over here. But
That's right.
now, as the neighborhood changes,
The landlord mind changes.
yeah.
And that's what happened. And at that time, they were doing the movie called The Ravendale Project.
Mm,
And Ozzie Davis narrated it. And the producer followed me for 9 months
mm,
because his idea was to show how prevalent the drugs was during the early 90s.
mm,
And at that time it was, you know.
mm,
And so the landlord had to abide by what we wanted, or he was going to be caught another way. So he said, "Okay, this girl, I'm going to see if that's true." And we did just that. We gave him a good tenant.
yeah. And also being a tenant that moves into a place that used to be a spot is that's different too, because you may still get somebody knocking on the door that, you know what I'm saying, in and out of wherever they, it
Hmm.
travels, you know what I'm saying,
Hmm.
themselves, just the energy, and the auras. How did you all go about finding a tenant that was willing to do that?
Well, we, of course, at that days, they had big signs out there say for rent,
Mm,
you know. And at first, we went through the block club. Do you have a friend or anyone that would like to rent this apartment, rent this house down the street? And we actually tested that person, put them
mm,
in front of us, you know, uh, interviewed them. What was their intention? Were they going to be a part of the block club? And it's funny. We selected someone that had 3 kids and was going to school to work herself off welfare.
wow. Okay.
And
All
we could
right.
have chose someone else, but we knew the potential of a good tenant.
So from this block club, I'm guessing that's where the eyes on it come. And at what point are you're balancing all this block club business and you're still at Osborne, I'm guessing at the time.
Right. And I was asked from Joy of Jesus, which was a hub in the Ravendale community
Hmm.
where they were trying to pull the residents together, run a youth program. They had a date, they had a camp, they had these different things happening. And I was approached by the owner, the director, would I volunteer? And I started volunteering. I volunteered 2 years, and he asked me to come on board. At that time, I left my job at the Board of Education.
Okay, and now let's talk a little bit about that as well. What do you think? Because so much has changed with the Board of Education since then. So many of the high schools have closed, many transitions, definitely for teachers and counselors. And now more social workers are inside schools. What was your take on Detroit Public Schools at that time?
At the time that I was there,
Yes.
I think that they had a little bit more pulse on the community. I think they had a little bit more pulse on that family.
Can you expand on what you mean
And,
by
and
that?
what I mean by that is, why is Johnny missing so many days of school?
Mm,
Johnny's missing a lot of days of school because the counselor found out that he is sending his other little brothers to school. He's getting there late. He's missing first hour class, which puts him behind in his credits.
hmm.
So there was a little bit more pulse on that child's family. I
Hmm.
think that because I visit a lot of homes and with where I am working now with them, I visit a lot of homes and I find out why this child is not online when they
Hmm.
should be online. And I think if we just if there was someone just giving them a little hope as to why that child is not online and give them alternative, they would do more than they do now.
Okay.
And I think because of the you see these schools closing up, and I can understand why. Uh, Lack of residents in that area, I can understand that. I said, but we have to get back to the basics
Mm-hmm.
with these families. We have to get back to the basics as to why. You know, a 14-year-old wrote me a letter,
Mm-hmm.
and the 14-year-old said, I get up in the morning and I take my clothes out of the hamper because no one was there to wash them. My kids used. And I get to school and I send my two little sisters to school. Then I get to school because my mother was not home. She didn't come home last night. He said, but as soon as I walk into the school, I get fussed at by the teacher because
Mm-hmm.
I ain't got no pencil.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that. He doesn't have a pencil because he didn't think of a pencil because he got his two sisters to school. He's putting on dirty clothes because his mother didn't come home the night before. So he's pulling them out the dirty clothes hamper. And he gets his two sisters to school because that's the only breakfast that they get to eat. But as soon as he got to doing all of that, as soon as he gets to his classroom, teacher gets after him because he ain't got no pencil.
I think I'm gonna say this. Make sure you send it near the mic again. I want people to get your message. So everything everything that you're saying is really giving more of a scope. Like when I talk to people about the state of a lot of schools, and some of this is a reflection of the state of America. Like I don't think it's as specific as Detroit schools or or anything like that. It's just more of a reflection of where we're at within the resources. And even you talk about what's closing because schools are a business. And
Mm-hmm.
then how do you operate at the same level before? And the tragic and sad thing is that it's so many people I think that are from the outside in that have no idea the real inner workings of some of what the students are facing. In my life journey, one of those times that I was teaching at a last chance school. So for people, last chance school, okay, first chance school is school,
Mm-hmm.
quote unquote. It's not even called first chance school.
Mm-hmm.
Second chance school is night school,
Mm-hmm.
And it was so interesting with night school at Northwestern because there'd be people that skip regular school all day but be at
Mm-hmm.
night school. It's like you might as well just might as well come to class in the daytime. Why you want to be here at 7 o'clock? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But that's a Kari thought.
Mm-hmm.
And last chance school is for exhausted efforts in both.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the times I'm leading a studio class, as the kids will call it, but like a music production class at a last chance school. And one of the students was extremely talented, like one of the best drummers that I think I've ever heard in my life. Drum major, had scholarships to Grambling, Southern, like almost full ride marching band scholarships, but could not get to class for anything because of that. And then when I remember I pulled him to the side, I'm like, look, bro, what's going on, man? And in that same thing, he's like, I am responsible for my other 5 brothers and sisters and ensuring that they can get to class and get to school back and forth. So I don't even have bandwidth and capacity. And not even just that term that I'll say sometimes adultifying a lot of young people, but past adult into parenthood. But they're still young people. So they're still making young people decisions in the mix of
Mm-hmm.
this where it's just one of those things now. It's like real life consequences. It's like this kid's failing.
That's right.
The reality is I have a context to why the kid is failing. have an even bigger context of why this extremely talented student is at a school like this. What do you do? And so many decisions like that, I think, are happening all the time. And on one end, this is the other thing in life, you know. Just me, what I said was, I was like, okay, I can't pass you without being here. So you're gonna have to at least make up a project to do something, which he didn't do the project. And just from my lens, it's like I gotta fail him because it's like the consequence of life. And this is like the nuance of things. Because some people see those consequences and it may be like, okay, that's real life. And some people hit those consequences and it may be like the thing that breaks the hope and the spirit that you speak to. That blueprint, and you've interacted with so many other people, which fast forwards me to this conversation to actually the community center coming to life. As you've gathered a lot of these other groups now, working with that group, and you manifest a center where you're hiring people, it's active. To me, it was like, okay, like right kitty corner across the street from Harpo's was for so many years Ravendale Community Network. A community center, computers, you had a clothing hamper, food, summer programs for children. You even hired me to teach some studio to some of your students one of them years. Interesting. Like that manifests all from like a lot of that other organizing. But within this, where I've always admired you and why you're always so much of an OG I respect, you gather the hearts and minds of a lot of people that I think a lot of people are kind of not as connected to. You know, the niche of some of the work, and I'm talking so much now, but this is how much I honor Toni. But the niche of a lot of this Detroit is different is like, I love my people. Sometimes it's very hard to like my people.
I know what you mean.
But I love my people and those settings because I think that so much is just not designed for us because of what we've been through.
That's right.
And that's some of those frustrations that we face.
That's right.
And it's not a lot of people that do provide spaces and places that really are genuinely for that person.
That's right.
That's for us.
That's right.
Because so many people create things where they want us to fit into
That's right.
systems that ain't for us.
That's right.
And it don't feel right.
That's
And it
right.
immediately disconnect. And it's like, I don't feel like that. We ain't supposed to be in here.
And then they're left out there.
So what do you think is given so much stress? Because from people that, you know, have struggled with so many things to even people that have excelled with so many things, but people have poured into you through that personal connection. How have you given voice advocating for a lot of people that don't speak for themselves and built those connections?
Okay, you know what? I do that. I do that. For one, the people deserve it. And I keep saying that over and over again. The people deserve better. Okay? And they deserve it in a different way that people want to give it to them. And it's hard to let that other person know that this person cannot go down the same path that you want them to go. But they can go they can go to a path and still be successful at the end. It's hard for people to understand that. And one thing that hurts me more than anything is, you know, I had a school in the city of Detroit in a neighborhood and was given permission, although it was told to me that that was a big mistake, that they did that. But the school, the Ravendale Education Center, was under Clintondale Continuing Education. And the greatest thing about that school is that they were in one of the most poorest neighborhoods. Ravendale was 85% at or below the poverty level. But yet, that building was filled every day with students that were either kicked out, came from detention center, didn't have enough credits. Those are the kids that we were working with. Excuse me. And our goal was to make sure that they receive a high school diploma. Detroit Public Schools couldn't see that.
Mm-hmm.
They looked at Toni McIlwain as somebody that was taking some of their monies. Instead of looking at that child or that student that needed a high school diploma.
Mm-hmm.
Because let me tell you something, when a student gets a high school diploma, that whole family changes. The dynamics change. Because that little brother underneath them see that their big brother got a high school diploma. So he's going to want a high school diploma too. Now you could turn it around and the big brother is out there selling drugs and the little one's going to say, hey, I can sell drugs too and get me a big TV set and get me a big car. But when that dynamic changes in that household for the good, you're going to get good out of it. You may not see it right away, but you're going to get good out of it. I could not get Detroit Public Schools to see that. Mm. I did everything to see that. Mm. Okay? And I tried my best to get them to work with me so that we could graduate more students. But instead, they said, let's close her down. Mm. Let's close her down. The saddest thing is they put the kids on the street.
Yeah.
So I lost some to death because they went out doing what they were doing before, breaking in houses and so forth. Okay? I lost some when the parents begged, let her keep that school. This was the only time that my child went to school. Is being in that poor neighborhood, in that atmosphere, feeling good about being with Toni, and they were getting ready to graduate. Couldn't get them to see that. You know, that hurts me more than anything. Mm-hmm. Is that there are people out there that think because they're in a situation where they could graduate kids that want to graduate, but not look at those and see why the other ones are not graduating. You know. And so it's hard to convince people that you're thinking that way, that they could think that way, but they don't, because they themselves are at a point where they feel their way is the only way. And that shouldn't be the case.
That's deep. That's very deep. And with that, man, oh man, I'm definitely going to bring you back. And this is such a different type of Detroit is Different for those that watch Detroit is Different so many times. But it's so rare to get somebody that is actually like so entrenched. And I do want to thank you. And I thank you, but I need to thank you even more for even joining me with this Detroit is Different journey. What connects you to connect even with people like me and others manifest some of the work that we're doing in community?
Well, you know, Detroit is different. If Detroit is different, Kari, then the people are different. But people need to understand why Detroit is different. Mm-hmm. That's what they don't understand. They think that Detroit shouldn't be different. And they should be different. You know, they really and honestly should be different. Mm-hmm. And still be able to be successful at the end of their journey. It's their journey. You know, it's their journey. All we have to do is help them along the journey. Okay? Help them along the journey that they don't trip up along the way. But let them know that your journey is just as good as somebody else's. It's just what you do during that journey that makes the difference. Mm. And we have to do that. We have to save our kids.
Mm-hmm. Well, like I say, I'm forever grateful that you have given me some game, but also work with us as we put together the efforts of the community work. so many different projects. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna probably get Toni on this. I'm already thinking that, and being that you're there and present for that means so much, so much. So towards the end, the classic Detroit is different questions. First one, your very first car, year, make, and model when you get it.
Okay, you know what my very first car was?
What?
A old 19. It was an old Ford.
Mm-hmm.
It had to be in 2000. I think it was while I was at Osborne. I bought the car from a counselor. Okay, I bought the car. It was in I think it was 83. I bought the car from a counselor. She had this old car and didn't have any heat, but I bought it anyway.
Okay.
And hey, I would hot wire the car.
Oh, man.
Get heat in the wintertime.
There you go.
But I drove that car till I couldn't drive it anymore.
Okay. All right. It's the end of the fireworks. You're the DJ. You get to play one song. What song you playing?
What song would I play is Patti LaBelle song.
Which one?
The one Wind Beneath My Wings.
Okay. All right. And this is always the come to Detroiter question. All right. So this is real fantasy right here.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody that from a whole nother universe come to Detroit, where's the first place you take them?
The first place I take them would be Ravendale. Because I want them to see the real deal of Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
The real deal. Not downtown.
Yeah.
I want them to see how people live and how they move forward if you give them hope. That's what I want them to see.
Well, always. Thank you so much, Toni. This has been phenomenal. As you know, also one of the anchors in the Grandma Street team.
Love it. I love it.
All right. Thank you.
Here.
Peace.
Thanks for having me.
That is a
Detroit is Different is where you get information, artistry, history, music, and even comedy. Detroit is Different, a home for the culture of Detroit. Visit online at DetroitisDifferent.com today.